Welcome everyone to our channel where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, collectibles, and the mysterious stories behind small pieces of metal that have turned into fortunes. And today we are going to talk about one of the most legendary and astonishing stories in numismatics, the tale of the 1976 1-cent coin that has shocked collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike because of the possibility of it being worth as much as $3 million thanks to its peculiar and almost unbelievable combination of errors, mistakes, and circumstances that have elevated it into one of the most valuable pennies ever discussed in the coin collecting community. And as we unravel this story, we will explore not just the coin itself, but also the broader context of coin minting in the 1970s, the types of errors that can occur during the minting process, how those errors can drastically increase the value of a coin, and why collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums of money for something that at first glance appears to be nothing more than an ordinary penny. So let us set the stage by going back to 1976, a year famous for the American bicentennial, a year when special quarter, half dollar, and dollar designs were issued to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the United States. But despite all that attention on larger denominations, the humble Lincoln cent continued to be struck in massive numbers, billions upon billions of copper pennies featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Yet within this ocean of pennies a tiny handful emerged with errors so remarkable that they became prized treasures, and among them stories circulate of a single specimen or a very tiny group of specimens from 1976 that, because of unique striking errors, wrong planchet strikes, double dies, and minting mistakes, have been valued at astronomical levels, leading to the incredible claim that a single 1976 penny can be worth $3 million. And to understand why this is not as far-fetched as it may sound, we need to break down the types of mint errors and how they can occur, beginning with the idea of a wrong planchet error, where a coin is struck on a piece of metal that was intended for a completely different denomination. So imagine a penny design being accidentally stamped onto a dime planchet, a foreign coin blank, or even a leftover piece of experimental alloy, and such a mistake can result in a coin that looks bizarre, with clipped edges, incorrect coloration, or weight that does not match the standard specifications. And collectors love these mistakes because they are exceedingly rare and cannot be replicated intentionally without access to the mint's production lines. And the 1976 penny in question is said to involve a wrong planchet error in addition to other mistakes, which multiplies its rarity. But that is not the only possibility, because double die errors also play a major role in valuable pennies, where during the hubbing process the design elements on the coin are impressed multiple times in slightly different positions, causing noticeable doubling on features like the date, the words Liberty, or I in God We Trust, or even the details of Lincoln's profile, and dramatic doubling can send a coin's value soaring from 1 cent to thousands of dollars. And now imagine a 1976 penny that not only was struck on the wrong planchet but also exhibits clear doubled die features. You suddenly have a coin that is unlike almost anything else in existence, and the scarcity of such a combination is why collectors are willing to throw millions of dollars into auctions to secure it, because in numismatics rarity is king, and errors that are unique, or nearly unique, are the ultimate prize. Yet we can go even deeper into the mystery, because there are other types of minting mistakes that could contribute to the valuation, such as off-center strikes where the die does not hit the blank correctly and part of the design is missing, broad strikes where the collar that holds the coin in place fails and the design spreads out unnaturally, multiple strikes where a coin is struck more than once causing overlapping images, and die caps where a coin sticks to the die and then imprints its distorted image onto subsequent coins. And each of these errors alone can make a penny worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. But if somehow a 1976 penny has 2 or 3 of these errors occurring simultaneously, you are looking at a coin that is essentially one of a kind, a freak accident of the minting process that no one could have predicted and that cannot be easily duplicated, which leads us back to the staggering valuation of $3 million. And while some might doubt such a number, it is not without precedent, because other rare coins such as the 1943 copper penny or the 1933 double eagle have reached multi-million-dollar prices at auction, proving that collectors with deep pockets are more than willing to pay for the right combination of rarity, historical importance, and era intrigue, and the 1976 penny's claim to fame rests on this delicate balance of factors. But let us take a closer look at why 1976 in particular was ripe for such mistakes. Because the US Mint was under enormous pressure that year, producing bicentennial designs in huge numbers while still maintaining normal production of circulating coins, so the machinery was working at maximum capacity, dies were being prepared at a rapid pace, and in such a rushed environment it is far easier for errors to slip through. And while the mint usually catches mistakes before coins leave the facility, some always manage to escape, and those few survivors become the holy grail for collectors decades later. And in the case of this 1976 penny, the narrative suggests that a combination of bicentennial production stress, leftover blanks, and doubled die mishaps produced a coin so extraordinary that its existence is almost mythical, fueling speculation, rumors, and excitement every time one of these era pennies surfaces. And when one finally did surface, the buzz it generated in auctions was electric, with bidding wars driving the price higher and higher until it reportedly reached into the millions. And what drives this kind of frenzy is not just rarity, but also the psychological thrill of owning something that no one else has, the bragging rights, the prestige, the story behind the coin, and all of that creates a perfect storm where a 1-cent coin, normally ignored and tossed aside, becomes a jewel worth more than luxury cars, homes, or even other pieces of fine art. And it is fascinating to consider how many people over the years may have unknowingly handled such a coin, maybe spent it on candy, dropped it into a jar, or left it in a drawer without ever realizing that they were holding a fortune. And this possibility is what excites everyday people too. Because the idea that a life-changing coin could be sitting in their pocket change keeps the treasure hunt alive. So as we piece together the story, we see that the 1976 penny's value comes not from one single error but from a cocktail of factors including wrong planchet, double die, striking mistakes, rarity of survival, and the historic context of its year. And the collector's market validates this because coins with less dramatic errors from other years have sold for tens of thousands. So when all of these elements converge into a single specimen, it is no wonder that the valuation hits the multi-million level. And while skeptics may argue that no penny should ever cost $3 million, the truth is that the value of collectibles is driven by passion, rarity, and demand rather than logical face value, which is why a small copper coin can outshine gold in terms of worth. And this is also a lesson about keeping your eyes open, because ordinary-looking coins can sometimes hide extraordinary secrets, and the 1976 1-cent piece is the ultimate embodiment of that mystery, a symbol of how human error, chance, and history can transform something mundane into something priceless. And so as collectors, enthusiasts, or simply curious people, we can appreciate not just the financial aspect but also the sheer wonder of how a penny could become a legend, reminding us that in every jar of change, in every drawer, there may lie a hidden story waiting to be discovered, and the allure of that possibility is what keeps this field alive. So next time you pick up a penny, take a closer look, because you might just be holding a piece of history worth millions. And with that, we wrap up our deep dive into the incredible saga of the 1976 penny valued at $3 million, a tale that blends minting errors, collector passion, and historical quirks into one unforgettable story that continues to inspire treasure hunters everywhere. Now, as we continue our exploration into the world of astonishing pennies that have risen far beyond their humble 1-cent face value, we move forward from 1976 into the very next year, 1977, which carries its own remarkable tale of a Lincoln cent that has stunned collectors with stories of being worth as much as $2 million. And just like the previous coin, its value is not due to the ordinary state of the coin but instead because of the extraordinary combination of minting errors, production mishaps, and freak accidents that turned a small copper coin into a masterpiece of rarity. And when we step into the year 1977, we must remember that the United States Mint was still operating under enormous strain following the intense output of bicentennial coinage in 1976, which meant that dies were worn, planchets were being recycled or rushed through the system, and mistakes had a much higher chance of occurring. So among the billions of regular Lincoln Memorial cents that were churned out, a handful emerged with errors so spectacular that they captivated the imagination of the numismatic world, and the most famous of these involves the 1977 1-cent piece that has been linked to auction estimates in the multi-million-dollar range, with some sources pointing to figures around $2 million, and once again, to understand why this coin is so highly prized, we must delve into the nature of the errors it carries. Because in numismatics, error equals value when rarity is extreme, and the 1977 penny shows us this principle in action, with reports suggesting that it was struck on a transitional wrong planchet, possibly one left over from experimentation with alternative alloys, or even struck on a foreign coin blank that found its way into the presses, giving it a weight and appearance that do not match the normal specifications of a penny. And for collectors, this anomaly alone would have been enough to elevate the coin into the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the story does not stop there, because further inspection has revealed that the coin also shows doubling in its details, the kind of double die error that creates crisp and unmistakable extra images on the date or lettering. And when a double die is bold and dramatic, the desirability skyrockets. And this means that the 1977 penny in question carries at least two major error categories at once, which is a combination so rare that it borders on unique. But in addition to wrong planchet and double die features, some examples of 1977 cents also display partial off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and striking anomalies where parts of the design are weak or missing, and this all adds to the lore of the year. Because when you combine the possibility of transitional alloys with die doubling and striking oddities, you get a coin that cannot be replicated. One that escaped the mint almost by accident and survived through decades of circulation or careful preservation, until someone finally recognized its worth, and that recognition has led to a frenzy whenever one of these pieces surfaces, driving values into the millions, because once again rarity is everything. And the truth is that collectors and investors alike are willing to pour staggering sums into acquiring something that may be the only example of its kind. Because beyond the material composition of copper and zinc lies the intangible aura of history, chance, and uniqueness, and this is exactly what the 1977 penny represents, a perfect storm of factors that has propelled its valuation to the $2 million level. And for those who wonder how a penny can be worth more than luxury cars or homes, the answer lies in the psychology of collecting, because rarity plus demand equals price, and when the supply is literally one or two coins in existence, the price can climb as high as bidders are willing to push it, and we have seen this with other legendary pennies such as the 1943 bronze cent and the 1955 double die cent, where values exploded far beyond expectations, and the 1977 1-cent joins their ranks as a modern myth of numismatics. And just like with the 1976 penny, the lesson here is that everyday pocket change can hide unimaginable treasures. Because coins like these were never meant to exist, they slipped out of the mint through error and chance. And they circulate unnoticed until one sharp-eyed collector spots the differences, weighs the coin, studies the details, and realizes that what they hold is a fortune disguised as a penny. And this is what keeps the dream alive for treasure hunters everywhere, the chance that in a jar of coins or a handful of change there could be a $2 million rarity waiting to be discovered. And so the 1977 penny is not just valuable for its metal or design, but for the story it carries, the thrill it provides, and the rarity it represents, making it a coin that has earned its place among the most valuable in American history. And as we drift from the fascinating saga of the 1977 penny worth up to $2 million, it is important to pause and reflect on why stories like these continue to captivate both seasoned numismatists and casual dreamers. Because each of these tales is not simply about a coin, but about the extraordinary chance events that remind us how the smallest imperfections can become the greatest treasures. And the 1977 1 cent in particular demonstrates how quickly an error that might seem insignificant inside the mint can turn into something legendary outside of it, and the fact that such a coin could exist at all keeps collectors scanning through jars, rolls, and pockets with a mixture of hope and excitement, because the line between ordinary and priceless is razor thin in the world of coins, and the very idea that such a simple piece of copper, normally overlooked and undervalued, can command millions of dollars shows how powerful rarity and uniqueness are in shaping human desire, and this creates a bridge of anticipation to the next stories that come with subsequent years like 1978 and beyond, when new mistakes, new double dies, and new striking oddities remind us that every year carries the potential for hidden gems waiting to be unearthed. And so the saga continues with each new discovery adding fuel to the fire of imagination that keeps the hunt alive for generations of collectors. Moving ahead in time from the legendary 1976 and 1977 pennies, we arrive at another fascinating chapter in the saga of small coins becoming monumental treasures, and this time the spotlight shines on the year 1989, a year that produced billions of ordinary Lincoln Memorial cents, coins that most people dropped into piggy banks, vending machines, or change jars without a second thought. Yet hidden within that ocean of copper-plated zinc lies a story of an extraordinary 1989 penny that has been valued at a staggering $1 million because of the incredible errors and striking anomalies it carries. And to understand why such a modern penny could command that kind of money, we need to remember that 1989 was an era when the U.S. Mint had long since switched from the solid bronze cents of earlier decades to copper-plated zinc planchets, a change that began in 1982. And this transition itself opened the door for error coins to occur, because the plating process introduced new opportunities for mistakes, such as incomplete copper coverage, blistering, peeling, and wrong metal composition if a leftover bronze blank accidentally got struck years later, and the 1989 penny in question is believed to represent just such a spectacular wrong planchet strike, a coin minted on a leftover bronze blank instead of the intended copper-plated zinc, making it instantly unusual. But that is only the beginning, because the same coin is also reported to show bold doubling, the kind of double die error that is so clear and unmistakable that you can see extra impressions in the date, lettering, or even Lincoln's profile without magnification, and dramatic doubling has historically sent coin values soaring into the stratosphere. So now imagine a coin that is not only struck on the wrong planchet but also carries a double die error, already a combination worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the lore of the 1989 penny goes even further, with reports of off-center strikes and minting anomalies that caused parts of the design to be missing or misaligned, and this layering of errors creates the perfect storm for collectors who know they will never find another exactly like it, and as with all great rarities, its value comes from scarcity, because in a year of over 7 billion coins struck, the survival of a single coin with this bizarre cocktail of mistakes makes it a true one-of-a-kind specimen. And this uniqueness is what pushes collectors into bidding wars where logic takes a backseat to passion, prestige, and the irresistible pull of owning something that nobody else can claim. And that is why the 1989 penny's valuation has been tied to figures as high as $1 million, joining the ranks of the rarest and most expensive Lincoln cents ever known. And just like the earlier legends of 1976 and 1977, this 1989 treasure reminds us once again that value is not determined by face value but by rarity, error, and desirability, turning a penny into a prize more valuable than gold, jewelry, or even some works of fine art. And for everyday people it keeps the dream alive, because who knows how many 1989 pennies have been spent without inspection. Who knows how many sit buried in coffee cans or jars across America, and perhaps one more extraordinary specimen still lies in circulation waiting for someone to spot the differences, weigh it, and discover that they are holding a fortune in their hand, and that possibility, however slim, is what fuels the endless fascination with error coins, making the 1989 penny worth $1 million another thrilling chapter in the ongoing hunt for hidden treasures disguised as ordinary change. And as we carry this journey forward into the 1990s, the momentum of excitement surrounding error coins does not slow down because with every new decade the US Mint faced fresh challenges, changes in technology, and mass production demands that inevitably left behind tiny but world-changing mistakes, and while billions upon billions of 1-cent coins rolled off the presses, a minuscule fraction contained errors so bizarre and unique that they transformed into treasures worth life-changing sums, and collectors kept their eyes peeled more than ever, knowing that every handful of pocket change could hide a miracle. And in the early 1990s we find remarkable tales of transitional errors where leftover planchets from previous compositions accidentally slipped into the presses, resulting in pennies that were the wrong weight, the wrong color, or even the wrong size, and one of the most intriguing stories involves coins from 1990 that were struck with a proof die missing its mint mark, a mistake that created a legendary rarity because collectors quickly realized that the No. S. 1990 cent was essentially an accidental omission that would never be repeated. And the frenzy around it sent prices soaring as collectors scrambled to acquire one before they disappeared into private collections forever. And just as this coin reached astonishing values, the later years such as 1992 delivered their own incredible stories with the famous close AM and wide AM varieties, subtle differences in the spacing of the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse. And though they might seem like small quirks to the untrained eye, these varieties are treasures worth thousands of dollars. With particularly rare years like 1992 and 1999 commanding tens of thousands in pristine condition, and the existence of these coins shows that even in the modern era when minting was highly automated and quality controls were stronger than ever, mistakes could still slip through that would forever alter the coin's destiny. But the allure of these discoveries does not lie solely in their numismatic technicalities. It also lies in the thrill that ordinary people might still find them in circulation. Because unlike ancient rarities locked away in museums, error pennies of the 1990s and beyond can still appear in everyday transactions, in bank rolls, in coin jars tucked away in closets, and in inherited collections where their true value has yet to be realized. And this is why the world of coin collecting remains as electrifying today as it was decades ago, because each year's production carries within it the potential for an accidental masterpiece. And whether it is the $1 million bronze transition era of 1989, the bicentennial era mistakes of 1976 and 1977, or the more subtle design varieties of the 1990s, the common thread remains the same: rarity, error, and historical context combine to turn copper-plated zinc into priceless treasures, and this lesson resonates with collectors and dreamers alike, teaching us to look closely, to examine the details, and to remember that even the smallest piece of change can hold within it a story worth telling and a value worth more than most could imagine. And as we push onward into the later 1990s and the new millennium, the saga of error coins only grows more intriguing, with each discovery adding fuel to the fire of anticipation that keeps collectors scouring their coins in search of the next $1 million penny.